Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Reigniting Small Business Podcast. I'm Laura Richards here with SBI, and today I'm here with Patrick Lee and special guest Monica Alvarado of the Bread and Butter Kitchen in Eastport, Maryland. So today we're taking an opportunity to highlight a local small business who's doing great things in the community. And by doing so, she's becoming a relevant resource to her community and giving back. And in so doing, she has created a following and a lot of good karma. So welcome, Monica.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So I just discovered when we signed on to begin this podcast that I actually already know Monica. When Laura had suggested that Monica come on as a guest, I heard the name, I knew some of that name, assumed since you owned a cafe that this was not the same Monica. And so it's kind of cool to find out that it is. And it's interesting because where we met previously was in a community leadership training program, Leadership and Arundel. And so your whole, I don't want to call it a shtick, but your whole shtick of being in the community, involving in the community. And so it's a natural thing, I think, for if you're opening a business, that your business would behave in a community-friendly way. So why don't we just start there? And why don't you just give a little background on, how do you look at, obviously you're an owner of a business, it needs to perform, but your business is part of a local business community that you're proud of and that you have a lot of influence on. So what does that mean? Is that something that just naturally happened? Did you plan that? What is your philosophy around that?
Yeah, so I appreciate that question, Patrick. My dog is participating in this call, but she's just off screen and she's so sorry. Okay, here she is. So being a part of the community is huge for us. So Bread and Butter Kitchen is actually located in Eastport, right on the water. We're in the middle of the restaurant itself is actually in an office building. And so most of the places right around the restaurant are all office buildings. That said, we are only a block away from the Eastport neighborhood. And so we do tend to see a lot of community members as our customers, our locals. And for me, embracing the locals and being a part of the community was a big part of establishing Bread and Butter Kitchen, because ultimately, we are on the water, so tourists love to come and visit us, but ultimately it's the regulars, the locals that keep us moving forward. And so for me, being a part of the community in a positive way was really important to me. It's something that, as you mentioned, Patrick, I've always been community focused, even when I was in the corporate world where my soul was slowly dying. It's always been really important to me to find a way to give back, and whether it's sharing your talents or donating food or doing something. So it's a big part of who we are at Bread and Butter Kitchen.
Monica, I have to tell you, before I even knew what you were doing in the community, your business itself is such a warm hug. My husband and I will roll in there off of a dinghy ride, and your staff is really welcoming. And I don't know, you kind of feel like you're in your mom's kitchen, but with a good view.
That is such a compliment. I am so lucky, actually. I bought the restaurant back in May of 2017. Now, I have a corporate background, so sure, I know business and finance and recruiting and HR and all that stuff, right? That's from my former life. Now, running a restaurant, I had not done, other than maybe working at McDonald's when I was 14. So I jumped in head first. Most of the big decisions I make in life are like that. They're spontaneous. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go. And having been to my place, you see it's got a gorgeous view. We're staring at the Naval Academy. We're right on the water. When I walked in to look at the restaurant, I was like, okay. I looked out the window. I was like, I'll take it. Didn't look at the kitchen. Didn't look at the numbers. It was a handshake deal, and I was open 6 weeks later. And literally a handshake deal. Not a good business decision, you guys. No, but that's another story for another day. Lots of legal fees involved with that one. But the restaurant itself had a staff there of 2 employees, and they had both. I was their third owner, so that was such a blessing for me because, and I didn't even realize it at the time, but having them there, having been there for a number of years, knowing the customers, the clientele, knowing what worked in the past and what didn't work, was so great for me. And so almost every employee that I have now is related to one of those 2. So it's really as a family environment. And I have always been kind of, I guess they call it a servant leader, right? So my team always comes first. If they're happy, I'm happy. And with food, as you know, and my husband will tell you, if I make food when I'm in a bad mood, it's not going to taste good.
Yeah.
So sometimes people come in and most of my staff is Hispanic and they'll say, why are you playing Spanish music all the time? I'm like, they want that and you want your food to taste good. So it's easy. So thank you. The staff is the best. And I'm glad that comes across even when I'm not there.
It does.
Yeah.
So talk to me about, is there in your little business area there, is there communication between business owners recognizing that you're all part of a little business community, local community there, or is that just happenstance?
You know what? We definitely are in communication with each other. We've got, there's the Eastport Business Association, which Mike Tomasini, who owns the Pirate Adventures, he and his wife own that. He's the president of that. So there's definitely that community of businesses within Eastport. But I think more importantly than that is the local neighbors, right? So right down the street from me is Leeward Market. Theoretically my competition, but no, like we're always sending people to each other all the time. And then Chart House is right there, Boatyard's right down the street. And we just kind of all embrace each other. It's not unusual for me to be running across to Chart House to borrow some eggs or for them to come borrow some spinach. Like we're very collaborative in that way. And then the local businesses around me, all the boat companies, the boat brokers, the renters, they're all very much engaged and always referring folks to us and vice versa. So there's definitely a family feel down there of collaboration. Certainly when COVID hit, that's increased for me personally. When we launched Feed in Arundel, being able to collaborate with restaurants that were all going through kind of the same challenges through COVID has been incredibly helpful for all of us. So I think that, working together has certainly been beneficial for everybody.
Monica, let's talk about that for a second. Talk about Feed in Arundel and what it's done and what it's meant to you over the course of the pandemic.
Feed in Arundel has been life-changing, honestly. We launched Feed in Arundel in March of this year, back in the beginning of COVID. And initially the idea was just that we would be working with other restaurants. We would raise money and then pay restaurants to actually make individually packaged meals, which we would then distribute at different food distributions throughout the county. And it was a win-win-win, right? So the restaurants are able to keep their doors open and keep employees working. So 2 things there. And then third, they would be able to help support the community. And so while it was not like this big profitable thing for a restaurant, it was enough to keep, enough to help pay their overhead and keep their doors open and keep employees working. And that very first weekend, one of the restaurants that was participating was able to bring 5 people back that they had just laid off earlier that week. Another one, Roxana from Caliente Grill, that day that I called her and said, I'm going to do this thing, Feed in Arundel, what do you think? Do you want to participate? They had made the decision to close the restaurant. And it was that, so that was like, never mind, we're staying open. We can figure this out. And so we actually have about 35 restaurants, all corners of the county, north, south, east, west, central county, that are participating. And initially we worked with private donors and we were able to raise around $200,000 in private donations. And then the county actually gave us a $200,000 grant as part of the CARES Act. And that money has sustained us and we're still going. So we have more meals going out this weekend.
So Monica, one follow-on question to that, and I thought this was just remarkable. Did Bread and Butter Kitchen benefit financially from any of that?
No, we were doing okay, right? So we weren't making a ton of money in April and May, but we were doing okay. So for me, it was more important to help the restaurants that were still struggling. And we still have a number of restaurants participating today that are still seriously struggling. So we're going to continue as long as we can. We're starting to look at ways to expand the program. A big part of what we want to do with Feed Anne Arundel is to figure out ways for restaurants to be a little bit more engaged in the community, whether it's donating food, whether it's volunteering. From a food sustainability perspective, we're really looking at things like, like Bread and Butter Kitchen, we're building our own community garden right outside of the building now. And that will help us grow vegetables for the restaurant. But the idea really is to be a community garden where anybody can grab what they need. We're going to build a little free pantry outside, kind of like the little free library concept, so that people can come and grab veggies or herbs or whatever we have available there, or they can leave some. So some home gardeners can share as well. We hope to see that kind of spread throughout the county as well. And so we're just trying to find ways where restaurants can continue to support the local community. And it's been really helpful.
So let's talk about this a little bit, because one of the things, if anyone who's watching our podcast or paying attention to SBI knows, we're always talking to the local business owners about being a community, that they're not competition. These are, if this business does well next door to you, you're more likely to do well, and so on and so on. It's a sustainable business community. But when we're telling folks, start teaming up, start talking, start doing this, they don't actually know what to do. Like, well, where do we talk to these folks? And do I just go say, hey, hi, I'm an owner, let's talk? Like, how do these things happen? He's much more likely to be part of this now. You just might as well bring him over. Let's start having him.
Right. Okay, that was fun. My husband's home, so the dog was very excited to see him, as you can imagine. Patrick, to that end, the biggest thing is just talking to people. In fact, take Feed Anne Arundel out of the mix. One of the things that I've done and am continuing to do is find ways to partner with local businesses. And so, for instance, Annapolis Ice Cream Company, they reached out to me probably a week or two ago, and they want to sell ice cream at my restaurant. And it's a win-win for us, right? So we're able to support their business while also giving our customers some ice cream. We're also going to work on a special Bread and Butter Kitchen flavor. So it's something that is expanding their customer base, and also expanding our ability to kind of serve.
So where do these things happen, though? So, I mean, let's be really specific. Like, is it at a Chamber of Commerce, at an association meeting? Like, or is it just you just are active, so people just?
I think whenever I have been approached from other businesses, it's either been through Facebook, or they might be in to eat something, or maybe they saw something online or in the newspaper, and they'll reach out. My email is right at the top of my website. It's Monica at Bread and Butter Kitchen. I don't hide that. You're not going through like an info. If you want to call me, you can call me. And so people are able to access me that way. And for me, for Feed Anne Arundel, for instance, and looking for ways to partner, I did exactly that. I started with a restaurant literally next door to me. I walked across the street to Chart House. I didn't really know anybody there, even though we've been neighbors for 2 years, or over 2 years. So I walked right in and I'm like, hey, I'm doing this program. Would you like to participate? And because of COVID, the VP of Chart House locally was there, and he's like, yeah, that sounds great. And then we all just started calling people that we knew, and it grew and grew. And so for me, if I have an idea, I'm just going to chase it down. Right? And I think that's really critical, is not to be shy. And it's not, even with Michelle, who's down the road and she owns Leeward Market, she does this. We have the same hours. We do breakfast and lunch. We're essentially very similar. We're very supportive of each other, and collaborate with each other when there's an issue, or when there's questions, or if you need help with something. Who better to ask than somebody that is in the same business as you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a question for you, which is, we're seeing a lot of people starting to make their changes for fall, winter, dining hours, tents, all of that kind of stuff. You were sharing with me right before we went live on the podcast that your sales are up by 40%, which definitely indicates that all these programs that you're doing, being a part of the community and being a face for your business are working for you. So what are you thinking about in terms of winter and adaptation and what's changing at Bread and Butter Kitchen?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, sales are up, which is fantastic. I think a lot of that has to do with our expanded outdoor seating. It has to do with being out in the community and people wanting to support us because of that. We get a lot of people that come in and are excited about our Feed in Arundel program or our Feed It Forward program. And so that has been great for sales. Now, with winter coming, I tell you what, Second Street where I'm located is so windy. It is the windiest street in the whole city, I swear. So I have concerns. It's nice to be outside right now. It's sunny. The weather is perfect right now. Everybody's loving it. But tents, I think, are going to be a challenge for me just because of the wind. Yeah. So what we do have the outdoor heaters. That's great. I ordered them in August because I had a feeling they would be very difficult to get, and they are now. So we have some already. I just ordered an outdoor fire table, like a gas table fire pit. And so we're going to have that outside. We're going to try and make it like a fun place to be in the cold days. So we'll have s'mores packs that kids can, and adults can go out and make s'mores on our little fire table. We're going to do hot cocoa and cider, and we'll try and do some fun things. We're going to do a BYOB campaign, bring your own blanket, and just really try to encourage people to continue sitting outside with us and eating outside. And it's something that I continue to think about. I actually sent out to all the restaurants that are on Feed in Arundel. There's an online competition on a website called IDEO. And it's like a crowdsourcing platform, but they had one for Boston or Chicago, one of them, where they're trying to come up with ideas to help restaurants figure out how to eat outside. And so a lot of different ideas came from that, as far as what to put on individual tables and the blankets. And, so it's interesting. We're still figuring it out. I'm still coming up with different ideas, and, we'll see what happens.
Hey, it's really exciting, and I love to hear it. I know for us, I was saying to my husband, I'm going to have a really good parka this winter and a wool scarf and a hat, and I plan to be doing just as much outdoor activity as I am now, because it's a way to stay happy.
Yeah, for sure. It helps to be outside.
Oh, absolutely. A little nature is always good during these depressing times, right?
Yeah.
So getting kind of specific with your winter plans. It sounds like you have some ideas there. And because we're in Maryland, we probably aren't going to get the snow. We've had a couple of years where we've gotten it, but we're probably not. But the whole temperature thing does, and getting dark early and all that does seem like it's going to present challenges to the restaurants.
Yeah, for sure.
Like your heater thing, and let's make this festive. But is there anything else you're changing? You're changing hours? Are you changing, any other innovations at this point?
Not. So we're not going to change our hours. Our hours are 7:30 to 3, and it's I think that'll be okay. If we had dinner hours, we would probably make some considerations as to when to start those. However, the cold itself, we're going to pray for good sun and mild temperatures and no snow. Of course, being 2020, I feel like it's going to be an apocalyptic winter.
You're
just for fun.
Right. I miss fun.
It's like I was listening to NPR one day, and they said that there was an asteroid that was coming to Earth, towards Earth at but it was only a 0.41% chance. And I was like, it's 2020. So let's go ahead and say it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I am still open to ideas and trying to figure it out. As I talk to my customers, they're like, Laura, they're talking about we're going to sit outside with our parkas. We're going to be fine. It's going to be fine. We'll be like French,
But I think that's another value to this whole community-based thing, is that once you actually start that process of making it community and all, then people want to support, right? They want to come in and go, no, we want to help. We want to make this work.
Absolutely. I can tell you, I have just been blown away by our customer base and how supportive they've been. And in fact, in Eastport, even in so April and May were really rough as far as sales were way down and things were just stressful. A couple of my employees had COVID here and there. So we had this whole ride that you're going through, and we're all still living in shock, right? So, but I will tell you, the customers from Eastport, what was so interesting, because it is really community focused down there, they were going from restaurant to restaurant. So they would eat at Bread and Butter Kitchen one day, Boatyard the next, Davis's Pub. So there is that true community kind of support there. And I think they're going to continue to do that for us through the winter too, for that very reason. They do appreciate having places in their community that support them and vice versa.
Monica, I think a lot of that is a big testament to the community that the businesses have created there. I see that same phenomenon on Upper West Street, where they've really band together and, starting with Dining Under the Stars, but then continuing, with the pandemic. It seems like those businesses that are threaded together make a stronger weave, and they support more, and they get more fish in the net. And those are the places where I like to spend my time, Sailor up on the outer area there. And then we've been spending so much time in Eastport. And I said to my husband, I said, this is crazy, until 2 years ago. I've lived here for 24 years. And until 2 years ago, I didn't spend the kind of time in Eastport that I spend today. So you're doing a really wonderful job, and can't thank you enough for joining the podcast today with us. Patrick, do you have one last question you want to wrap it up on?
I want to go back real quick to your employees, the two employees that were there. They're still there, right?
They are. Yeah. And
are they the biggest advocates for the restaurant and your ownership?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, Lupe, she's my manager. She's been there now 8 years, right? So I'm her third owner. She's been in that same location for 8 years. I will tell you, in the beginning, she was kind of burnt out. She'd been, again, making the same food every day, yada, yada, yada. And so as we, kind of expanded what Bread and Butter Kitchen looked like and what that, my brain just fried out right just then, but it's the place it's fun to be there, and it really is. I really am committed to my employees. They all get 2 weeks of paid vacation. They all get paid well. So it's not minimum wage. Nobody starts there at minimum wage, and I really try hard to make sure that they have the support they need. They need time with their families, their kids. So that's a big part of it. And so really for me, when I was getting ready to open the place, I went to a friend of mine, Will, who is a manager at a restaurant called Excellence here in Annapolis. And I asked him, because he had the same staff for as long as I could remember. And I said, what's the secret to keeping your staff happy? And he said, if they need something, you get it for them, no matter what it is. And he's like, you just make sure they have everything they need to do their job successfully and easily. And that was solid advice. In fact, I just spent a ridiculous amount of money to do that, upgrading all of the equipment in the kitchen, because the girls really needed that to happen. So
how much do they participate in sort of the brain trust side of design and all?
They're a big part of it. So several items on our menu are family recipes of theirs. In fact, chorizo we just rolled out. I am launching something called Provisions by Bread and Butter Kitchen, which is kind of our retail arm. A lot of the stuff we make in-house is from scratch and with our recipes. And so when I was getting started there, we were using sausage and chorizo from a local farm, which was great, but the recipe was always inconsistent. So we just started making it ourselves. And the chorizo recipe is actually Lupe's aunt's recipe that was handed down from her grandmother. So we're now selling that as retail packs and having it produced in a USDA facility in Landover. And so that chorizo is named after Helly. It's her recipe. And I'm essentially leasing the recipe from her for the first 2 years. She'll get a percent of profits, and she maintains ownership of the recipe forever. So she can go do her own thing, or if I sell the company or whatever. So I hope that kind of expresses in a tangible way how much I value my team and
It
want them
absolutely
to,
does.
share in everything that we do there. It needs to feel like their home and that they have ownership and are empowered to make decisions.
And that approach is the abundance approach, right? Because you're doing that not only with your customers and your employees and your community and the other business owners and your competition, or so to speak, competition.
Yeah.
And it is by demonstration of your store, your restaurant, it actually does pay itself back. Yeah. It's a proof.
Big time, right? So where everyone else is down this year, Bread and Butter Kitchen is up 40%. And I can only attribute that to our culture and to what how we are truly focused on the community, giving back. And I tell, like even having the Black Lives Matter signs in the window, which was somewhat controversial. We talked about that a while ago. It has actually been the opposite, where people are so happy to be able to support a company that that is transparent about who they are and their beliefs and what we want and what, for the community. So it comes back in spades.
Excellent.
Monica, this was just the most fun conversation I think I've had on our Reigniting Small Business podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I can't wait to talk to you next time over my hippie hash.
Yes.
My favorite bread and butter dish.
It's so good.
It is so good. And for all you listening and viewing, head on over to Bread and Butter Kitchen in Eastport. It's a wonderful place and it warms your heart and your belly at the same time.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was so lovely.
Well, I hope I see you soon.
I'm sure we will.
All right. Everybody tune in next week to Reigniting Small Business with Patrick Lee and myself from SBI.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.